I've never been a huge fan of the Assassin's Creed series. I like some of their games, but they're getting more and more derivative as time went on. I personally think the second game is still the best that managed to maintain a good balance between good gameplay and story. Then it got repeated twice with some minor improvements and some drawbacks even. 3 was just totally forgettable. 4 is pretty damn good as a pirate game, but it's not really that good as an Assassin's Creed game. And ever since the 4th one, I just lost interest to the series in general. Unity was released at a time where I have a PC that can barely run the 4th game. Where I heard that the PC port of Unity was awful and it was riddled with absolutely horrendous bugs, I just gave up with the series at that point, even though, from what people tell me, Unity is a pretty good Assassin's Creed game despite all of the issues. I only returned to Assassin's Creed Syndicate years later, and I remembered beating that game on a PS4 rental. Syndicate was fine, there's really nothing groundbreaking about it, and it doesn't do much to offend me, and that's unfortunately one of the main problems of Assassin's Creed. Their games are nothing really groundbreaking. It did pique my interest a bit more when they decided to not release the game for another year. Ubisoft probably tried to figure out ideas and how to tweak the Assassin's Creed formula because all of these games are the freaking same. And then they come up with Origins, which I've heard mixed reviews on. I have zero interest in Origins, but I decided to check on Assassin's Creed again with their new installment, Odyssey. It was on sale for around 25 bucks here, which is quite astonishing considering that this game was released last year and this is a AAA title. Although to be fair, I did buy it on Christmas. Welcome to Appleman's Uncapped. It's the same thing over and over again. Today's review is gonna be a late review to Assassin's Creed Odyssey, a game from a franchise that pretty much every gamer on the planet Earth knows about. I initially avoided the game because $60 for an Assassin's Creed game is just too much of an asking price for me and I'm not interested in Assassin's Creed anymore. But the game was on sale during Christmas and people say that it's really not that bad. So I bought it for 25 bucks during Christmas just to see how Assassin's Creed have progressed. The first moment I played this game, my first thought was, this isn't Assassin's Creed, this is Dark Souls. And I'm not saying that because the game is difficult, I'm saying that because the game literally plays like Dark Souls. You can lock on enemies, dodge roll on them, and your attacks are bound to the bumper for the light attacks and trigger for the heavy attacks. So gone was that counter hit combo system that every Assassin's Creed game has. This time you have Souls-like combat with not just one weapons, mind you can use many types of weapon in the game, you know, just like Dark Souls. And then after all of this, I realized what Ubisoft did on that 1-year hiatus between Syndicate and Origins. They're not trying to reinvent the Assassin's Creed formula. What they're trying to do here is to make Assassin's Creed to play like the most popular title that's being released today. In other words, not Assassin's Creed. They're putting a discount Dark Souls combat because hey, people like Dark Souls, right? They put in RPG elements because hey, people love Witcher 3, right? And people wonder why the newer titles got a mixed reception. Let's talk about the story because Assassin's Creed always put at least some effort into it. You're playing as either Alexios or Cassandra in ancient Greek. The two siblings were separated and now you're on a quest to find out the truth of where your families are right now while getting yourself involved into a conspiracy involving the war between the Athens and the Spartans and also a secret cult organization that is friending to destroy the world. That's a very typical Assassin's Creed plot, but I do wonder if the women in Greek were really trained in combat to the point where they are capable of joining battles. I'm not a history expert and this is a game that is supposed to be authentic, but then again, this is also a game where you can encounter a freaking giant, so I think any discussion of historical accuracy should be thrown completely off the window. Now, a typical Assassin's Creed game usually takes you around 20 to 30 hours, and the game is fun enough for me to actually beat it. Unfortunately, after 20 to 30 hours in, I was way too tired of Odyssey. I'm just so utterly bored. I simply do not want to progress. I can just play anything else more interesting, like that Tales game that just got remastered. That was at a point where I said screw it and I continued the story by watching the cutscenes on YouTube. Sure, you can't make your own choices, but the game is way too boring for me to give a damn, and I just want to see the conclusion of the story as soon as possible. Assassin's Creed has essentially turned into an RPG at this point, a discounted version of Dark Souls and Witcher 3, but with none of the things that make those games good. The game is way too freaking long. I appreciate the game for having 100 plus hours of content, but the appeal of the game ran out the moment I entered the 20-hour mark. Make a long game as much as you like, Ubisoft, but I just simply cannot stomach how long this game is. Let's talk about the combat for a bit. Again, the combat is essentially discount Dark Souls with very little thought being put into them. If you spam combos to the enemy so much, they will always find a way to retaliate with unblockable attacks and kick you out to interrupt your combo. That's pretty freaking cheap if you ask me. In fact, this entire combat system is lazy, cheap, and uninspired. They just took Dark Souls and combined it with some elements of MOBAs and Witcher 3. If you're the type of person who likes stealth in Assassin's Creed, I'm sad to say that stealth has been significantly downgraded. While it is still there, the guards are a lot more aware of your presence and they are able to spot you doing weird stuff. Assassinating someone also takes quite a while, even if it is just an instant kill, because your player character needs to look freaking cool doing that, and thus you have enemies spotting you before you can even react. Also, silent assassinations don't always instant kill for the higher level enemies. You actually need to have higher damage counts or better skills to improve it. That was really fun. Everything about Assassin's Creed Odyssey felt like a discount of games that already exist. Yes, you get to ride a ship in this game. Hooray! We're gonna have ship battles again and it will be as equally fun, right? No, it isn't. The ship is just kind of there. It's just your means of transportation between islands that you haven't discovered, and this could be replaced by practically anything, really. The ship is just a cheap and lazy addition in the game, a discounted version of what Black Flag or even Rogue have to offer in terms of ship combat. That's basically Odyssey in a nutshell in terms of gameplay. It's a discounted version of many other games in the past, including a game from its own series that is just sort of there. It doesn't really do anything much other than slapping the Assassin's Creed name to it. I feel like a lot of the game's elements are thoughtless and slapped in there because people might like it instead of giving it an actual purpose for the narrative. And speaking of discount, some of you might be interested in the romance mechanics of this game. Well, the romance mechanics in the game is not actually romance, it's just a one-night stand. It's so superficial I ended up not romancing anybody until later on, and even then it's just one minor scene. I play as Cassandra, and unfortunately almost every romance option I encountered are for girls. Not that I dislike role-playing as a lesbian, I just wish that there are more guys option. The only guy option that I encountered after around 10 to 15 hours was with that leech Howland looking dude who looked like he was having an orgy with a goat. There was also this dude that got a rather elaborate intro in one of the game's quests. He sounds like a cool Spartan warrior type of dude that I want to romance, but as far as I know, I couldn't, and even if I could, it's not gonna be worthwhile anyway. Let's talk about the RPG elements of the game that are outside of the upgrades and the leveling system, which are also discounted versions from other games. There are also dialogue trees that you can pick on the game and quests that would ultimately affect the outcome of the multiple endings in the game, but again, they're just discounted versions of other dialogue options and multiple choices and endings from many other games in the past. There's really not much thought being put into them. The reason why they're there is because other better games have them, and putting them in there automatically makes them good, right? I know that I've been bashing this game for being a discount, but let's move on from bashing on the discount and actually praise the game for the things that I think it does really damn well. For me, I think the story of the game is quite intriguing. It has a really nice simple setup early on, with characters that are legitimately likable. There are really emotional and tear-jerking moments in the latter parts of the game that is really effective. I'm intrigued with the main story and how the characters are gonna destroy the cult with other famous historical figure characters, including this dude whom I think I've seen him on YouTube somewhere. I do like the stories and the personalities that are given to the characters. I really like Cassandra as the protagonist. She's pretty, strong, and she's very hard-headed. Thankfully, the dialogue trees do not restrain her actual character from showing, which does make her to be an actual character of herself rather than just a mere projection of the player. Don't know much about Alexius though, and I couldn't be bothered restarting the game to play him again, but Cassandra is pretty good. That being said, in terms of the series in general, I can't help but to think that the entire story has been jogging in one place. Ever since Assassin's Creed 3, the series has never truly progressed on its story, especially the present day. It feels like what Desmond did in the last couple of games ended up being rather pointless. Desmond is a pretty bland character, but at least he kept the present story plot to have actual meaning and relevance. And another thing that I find absolutely amazing in this game is the environments. Ubisoft always pulls off in the environments in the graphics department, and this game is straight up one of the most beautiful games that I have ever played. There are so many locations in this game that actually made me to pause and gawk in awe. It's so beautifully rendered, and there's clearly a lot of effort being put in the environments of the game. Unfortunately, that level of beauty comes at a hefty cost in terms of performance. This is an insanely poorly optimized game, both in the consoles and on the PC. Steve from Hardware Unboxed did a benchmark video for a lot of the GPUs in the game. I highly recommend you to check his video out, link down below. From his video, if you want to run the game at 1080p very high settings on 60 FPS, you would need a 1080 Ti or above. For those of you who have older graphics card, you're essentially SOL for the very high settings. For medium, however, you can barely get away with it using an RX 570. So much for the PC master race. Let's get into the next gen consoles like the PS4 Pro or Xbox One. I'm pretty sure they're gonna give us good 60 FPS performance, right? Nope. Here's a video from VG Tech. All PS4 and Xbox One versions of the game are all rendered on 30 FPS, with the PS4 Pro and Xbox One X being more stable than its older counterparts. Clearly, this game is not intended to be played on 60 FPS. You have to play this game on 30 FPS unless if you're part of the 5% of the world who has a high-end $2,000 rig, or you are fine with the game looking like it was from 5 years ago. I played this game on a slightly overclocked 1050 laptop with a Core i7-7700HQ, and it can only maintain a stable 30 FPS if I put it on 720p and on high settings. I did test it on a 1080p high settings, which works fine, but it is unstable as hell. I tested it both overclocked and not overclocked, and it is also equally unstable. And I have this game installed on a 500GB Samsung A60 EVO SSD, one of the fastest SSDs in the market. I mean, Jesus Christ, Ubisoft, can you stop with with these freaking poor PC ports already. And now let's talk about the microtransactions. Now, while it is true that you can get through the game just fine without the needs of microtransactions, I just really don't like how Ubisoft uses the game as an opportunity to make people to buy stuff so that you can win this entire thing easily. The most insulting thing that Ubisoft tried to sell to me was the permanent XP and money boosters. In other words, they sell an even easier difficulty for the players who think that easy was way too tiresome. Ubisoft, Persona 5 offers me 5 times XP and money boosters if I drop the difficulty to safety for free. The fact that you put an even easier difficulty that grants you permanent XP and money boost in all of your saves on a freaking paywall is just the absolute scummiest of things. But considering that most pay-to-win noobs are rich people anyway, good job exploiting that market. Overall, Assassin's Creed Odyssey felt like a game that tries so hard to bring more life to the Assassin's Creed franchise, a franchise that I personally think should just be axed off the moment they concluded Desmond's story in Assassin's Creed 3. This game doesn't feel like an Assassin's Creed game, it's simply a shell of its former self. What I'm offered here is a game that is just so-so. It's nothing spectacular, nothing groundbreaking, nothing innovative. The only thing that makes this game shines are the graphics and the environments, which is sort of a pun, but it's true. I had fun with this game for sure, but this game is way too long, and the fun doesn't really last that long. What it does have right now is a game that has elements from other better games, including one from its own series, but they're just done not as well. For me, this game gets 2 blue caps out of 5. This game is way too boring for me to continue and way too shallow for me to progress. I just couldn't stomach to play 20 more hours of the same thing when I could just play something else that are more interesting. And even if I did power through the game, the story still stays shut in one place and never progresses into anything interesting. So now let's talk about the price and whether or not I'd recommend this game. For $60, well, you got a lot of content for sure, but it's only a matter of time before you got bored after 10 to 20 hours in. So while the game has content that is worthy of 100 plus hours, I think the average gamers would be bored after 10 to 20 hours in. I'd rather you spend that $60 on other better titles that give you a more valuable experience. Catherine Classic is a third of that price, and that game is freaking sweet for 15 to 20 hours long. For 25 bucks? Probably only if you are genuinely interested in the game and you don't want to buy the game at full price. Otherwise, don't bother with Assassin's Creed Odyssey. It wastes way too much of my time when I could just do literally anything else. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm very sure that your time is better spent on literally anything else other than this game.